And what people seem to forget is that raising a child is a full-time job, more than full-time.
Absolutely.
Going to work is also a full-time job. The household comes separate to that, and everything that falls in the household should be divided equally. And it's not. It's so unequally divided.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I'm Jess. We're here with Larissa,
Hello.
my wonderful co-host, and today we want to talk about a hot topic, the mental load.
Yeah. The joys. Or
Tell-
not.
Yeah. I feel like so my experience with the mental load is quite unique because I feel like whenever I see those memes about husbands, that's me. I'm the husband. I'm married to a unicorn. His love language is acts of service. So he does a lot around the house. And look, my mental load used to be extreme, but then when we made the change of him stopping work to study and raise the children while I worked ridiculous hours on a ridiculous number of projects, things shifted a lot, and a lot of the mental load became his job. And there's still things like to this day he's never booked a doctor's appointment or anything like that for the children. But most of definitely the physical load falls on him.
Yeah.
And then just the, reading school newsletters and especially I always joke that reading, like keeping up to date with the correspondence from kinder and school is a full-time job in itself because the number of newsletters you get.
Wait till you get to primary school.
Yeah, well, I've got both at primary
that's
now,
right, you do,
and it's a lot. And so I don't think I've got anything to complain about. In fact, the other day I was saying to him, I think we need to get that fair play card deck, and we'll talk about that deck later. But I think we need to get it because the scales are tipped too far in the direction of him doing so much.
But how good that you're even having that conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, again, we talk about this a lot. Awareness is the greatest benefit that you can have. So, I think half your battle's won when there's an awareness of like, okay, the scales are out of whack.
Yeah. How's your mental load? What's been your experience with the mental load?
I've got to find a line between not canning my husband and, expressing my experiences. And look, we probably have a bit of an extraordinary life in that we both run our own businesses, right? So it's not a normal household in many regards. And, being a builder comes with a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. So, it's, and then, obviously I've been in creation mode and now we're open with Homb. So it's intense at the best of times, but there is more of the mental load that I carry. And I do say to him, he says, what's wrong? How come you're so stressed and blah, blah, blah. And I think I manage my stress quite well because I never used to and landed in hospital and did all those things. And then I was like, okay, I'm not being that person. But the mental load creeps in regardless of you feeling stress or not, because it's just like you just got to do stuff.
Yeah.
My greatest hated line in the world is, what are we having for dinner?
Oh, yeah. This has been a topic of conversation even before kids. I've had friends being like, I'm going to come up with an app that just helps people figure out what to have for dinner. There's all these people constantly trying to solve this what are we having for dinner conundrum. There's meal planning. There's, there's all this stuff that people do, but it never seems to solve it.
I would love to be able to meal plan and do all the things, but again, for me, it's a time thing.
Yeah.
And also trying to carve out me time as well. Like a Sunday is like
That's sacred. Yeah. Sundays are sacred. I am not meal planning on a Sunday. No.
I don't want to be standing over the stove cooking. And I know I can hear Vaughan, all the nutritionists.
Cassie,
Yelling
our
at
wonderful
me now.
Cassie, who's
Yes,
the
Cass.
best meal planner.
Oh, my God.
I wish I could be like that. I'm just not.
I know. Neither am I. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And I've tried so many different ways of doing the whole,
same.
okay, how are we going to do dinner? And so I would, go to the Vic Market or South Melbourne Market and I'd buy all the groceries for the week and I'd be like, okay. But then I found towards the end of the week, just the food wasn't nice.
Yeah.
And,
You change your mind. You don't want
change
to
your
eat
mind.
what you thought you wanted to eat earlier in the
Yeah.
week. It comes to the end of the week and you want to eat something different.
And then you add kids' activities in there. Like Seb doesn't get home from soccer till after 7 o'clock, 2 nights a week. And then he's got normal things. And then Valentina's got dance. And so it's not like we have a set time that we sit down to dinner. And it's just, it takes a lot. And then all the communication between all of the activities and all the things. And and I know we've probably jumped to having older children, but, a lot of it still applies to in that immediate
the newborn phase.
postpartum.
Yeah, especially the food component. So a big thing that, I say to all of my clients, and I think we even talk about it in Life After Birth, is that idea of having – so there's a couple of lists I always encourage people to have on their fridge. One is a list of go-to snacks that are either in the fridge, in the pantry, or easy to prepare so that the minute your partner or your doula or your mum, your mother-in-law, whoever it is, notices you're starting to get hangry, or even the minute you sit down to breastfeed, there's a snack in front of you. You don't need to ask for it. You don't need to think about what you want.
Yeah.
It's just there. And having a list on the fridge just removes that what would you like to eat question. The other list is the freezer inventory and just knowing what's in the freezer and someone just going, right, I'm going to pull that dal out. I'm going to cook some rice. That's what we're having for dinner. I think, we have jumped ahead because we do both have older children. But I guess for anyone who's listening that still doesn't quite understand what we're talking about when we say the mental load, it's all the tabs you have open in your brain at any given point in time. And it's all the things, the lists on lists on lists. Got to buy nappies, got to do the laundry, got to do this, got to do that, got to contact this person, that person, booking appointments. It's relentless. And, running a house is a full-time job. And I think what often happens is before you start a family, often both partners are working, and then all of a sudden one is at home with a baby and the other is still at work. And so a lot of the household chores end up falling on the person that's home with the baby. And what people seem to forget is that raising a child is a full-time job, more than full-time.
Absolutely.
Going to work is also a full-time job. The household comes separate to that. And everything that falls in the household should be divided equally. And it's not. It's so unequally divided.
Absolutely.
I'm in a Facebook group called Mums of Darebin.
Oh, yes.
There's also Dads of Darebin, which I'm not allowed to be in because I'm not a dad. But Andy is in Dads of Darebin, and he tells me that everything in the Dads of Darebin group is like, oh, does anyone have this drill bit I can borrow, or does anyone, like it's always like practical stuff.
Yeah.
Mums of Darebin truly breaks my heart because most of it is anonymous posts of women
sharing,
needing to vent about their useless partners. And I just don't know how we got here. And, I live in a neighbourhood where
this conversation's going to divert into a patriarchy conversation.
I mean, we'll try not to go too hard on the patriarchy today. But I live in a neighbourhood where, you go to the playground and it's mostly dads there with the kids, and that's wonderful. And there's that whole sentiment of when someone sees their dad taking their kid to a swimming lesson or taking their kid to the playground or even to the supermarket, they're like, oh, you're such a good dad. And when the mum does it, it's just expected. But that's not what we're talking about today. But what happens in the Mums of Darebin group is there's people venting about just how useless their partners are and how much they have to do. And even Mother's Day, it's so heartbreaking. Mums having to plan their own Mother's Day. Yep. It's so, so sad.
But also even the school Mother's Day stalls.
Oh.
I can't tell you, on the WhatsApp group for school, it is generally mums running the Mother's Day stall, the mum's running the Father's Day stall, and there's the token dad who will come and do the Mother's Day stall for a couple of hours. But I just think that is like, that just kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. So I'm sure that everyone who's listening has plenty to say about this. And when we were writing Life After Birth, I put it to the community. I said, tell me about your mental load, because everyone's looks different. And I kind of wanted to write a list of, these are all the things that might be in a mum or birthing person's head at any given point in time. And there were so many wonderful responses that we ended up publishing some people's answers. And I'm not going to read them all out verbatim, but it's like, admin related to all enrollments, due dates, vaccinations, payments for any lessons, such as music and swimming, upcoming friends' birthdays and presents, cleaning out, recycling, outgrown clothes, shoes and toys, researching ideas for play that isn't TV, researching and shopping for meals that hide vegetables, researching and learning about strategies for facilitating upcoming socially expected milestones.
Hiding vegetables, oh my God, yes.
Sleep training, toilet training, starting school, worrying about how to respond to challenging behaviour. It goes on and on and on. Yeah. And there's just, a lot of the time I feel like in my home, even though the domestic load is definitely split unevenly towards Andy, I still carry a lot of the mental load when it comes to the children's development. Yeah. And I'm constantly, and Andy studied teaching, so he does know a lot of the stuff that I'm sending him all the time, but I send him so many articles and he never reads them. And I'm like, we need to be on the same page about this and I really need you to read it. And it's just, I know that so many other people are in the same boat. It's like we do all this research and even getting your partner to read it is so difficult.
Yeah. I mean, for my experience, it's sort of probably not great gotten to a point where it's like I just do it now and I tell John what's happening.
Yeah.
Because it's just, for me, it's almost easier because then it's kind of like it's done. He doesn't have to worry about it.
You don't get asked 1,000 questions about.
Yeah, I don't need to consult him. He completely trusts me and I love that. And then I'm like, just letting you know, we've got a math tutor for Valentina. I know we've kind of talked about it, blah, 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 or whatever it might be. And he's like, oh, great. Okay, cool. Amazing. And then he might meet the math tutor like in 3 months.
Yeah.
On the rare occasion that he's home,
Yeah.
But it is that, I think that's the other extreme to it. And sometimes that's when you get to that and I get to that point and I say, John, my mental load's just too much. So what are we doing?
Yeah.
But then day-to-day life, you just end up going and then you end up back at that point where I'm like, oh, John, my mental load, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And it's difficult. And I don't think it's anyone's fault.
No.
It happens, but how do we find the resolve in not constantly burdening ourselves with the mental load? Yeah. And how do we even the playing field?
Well, you spoke earlier about a podcast that you were listening to where they said
so the Resilience Project. Yeah. So there was an episode where Hugh had his wife on, and similar to the Fair Play deck, they were talking about how they now basically split all of the tasks, for lack of a better term, in their household, and they fully have to trust each other that they completely manage that task in its entirety. So there's no me organising all the soccer stuff and then John taking,
he doesn't get to be the fun dad without the hard work.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like if there's swimming, it's like the whole management of swimming.
Get the swimmers, the goggles, the towels, everything
if
ready.
It's the dentist appointment. It's Charlie needs to go to the dentist and it's calling the dentist. It's organising it in my diary for when I can take, or, if it's difficult, then this has to happen. But, so it's that mental load and the other partner is not not
The thing
allowed
is,
to
this
think.
is all very good and well to say in theory, but for so many families, it just doesn't work. And what happens is, because I always tell people to really lean into your strengths. So in our home, there's things I'm good at and there's things that Andy's good at, and that works for us. But in other families, someone will say, I gave my husband one job and it's still not done.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be a nag.
Yeah.
Because nagging is, frowned upon. But what do you do? How do you?
I know. And I can think of a million experiences that are in our household of how I would do something and how John would do something.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You do need to compromise and lower your expectations.
You have to let go.
If for your own mental well-being.
Yep.
Like you need to surrender a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
If your partner's going to do the vacuuming, let them do the vacuuming. If they don't do it perfectly the way you would, let it go.
Yep.
And if you really need vacuuming to be done a certain way, that's your job. And again, so much easier said than done.
It is, but I think it's those moments where you just got to take that deep breath and just be like, he's doing his thing.
Yeah.
Or she's doing her thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah. And I think also what's important for all families is it's really easy, especially when you're in the thick of the newborn phase, because you're, as a birthing person, your life has been flipped on its head. And often the non-birthing partner, they're still going through changes, but it's not as immense for them.
No.
And so a lot of people tend to internalize and just get, and we just have these lists and lists and lists and lists. And then the resentment builds because they're at work all day and they're not getting enough time with the baby, and you're at home with the baby all day and you're not getting enough time for yourself, and you're doing all this stuff, and resentment builds. Whereas if you can, so instead of it being me versus you, my list versus your list, my load versus your load, if people can look at it as the load, this is the load of running a family, I don't want to say running a family. Families aren't businesses, it's the load of raising a family where both parents are happy and healthy. And if you can view it as you're a team and this is the load that we share and this is what we're going to tackle on a strengths-based basis, it does make things easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would, but I can also hear a lot of women listening to this in their car or on their walk going,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you're dreaming, Jess.
and I don't want to generalize because it is a big generalization and there will be so many unique situations and circumstances of what families look like and what that mental load looks like.
Yeah.
But I think carrying the mental load is different for everyone. But if everyone could sit around a table and just go, this is how I'm feeling. I don't want to feel like this. Can you help me out?
Yeah. And it might be sitting down and writing a list with your partner of every single thing that you both do. Because I think it's important to see what the other person does as well.
Yes.
Because there's often so much invisible.
Have no idea.
This is the whole thing about the mental load. It's invisible, right? Yeah. And so I know I have been, while we've been chatting, I have been talking a lot about the physical tasks. And we did say this episode's about the mental load. There is so much mental. The mental load of the physical tasks is immense, but the mental load is so invisible that we do need to be aware of the other person's mental load as well. Yeah. So something I recommend to everyone, but I have never purchased it myself and I'm so annoyed. I wish I had it today, is the Fair Play deck. Because I don't have it, I can't give a comprehensive outline of how it works, but my understanding is that it's a deck of cards and it's got everything in it from shopping to playing golf to, everything. And you take out all the cards that apply to your unique family dynamic and then you split them and you see who's doing what and who's got a fairer load. But I think the really beautiful thing about this is that it's not just chores. They're also trying to make sure that people carve out time for themselves. Yep. And the people that started this Fair Play deck, they have a podcast. And I listened to an episode the other day and they're talking about how women's time is treated like sand, like it's infinite, and men's time is treated like diamonds, like it's very rare and precious. And I think about all the people whose husbands go and play golf on the weekends, you know, after being at work all week. And I just think it's really important to, when we're thinking about the mental load and thinking about the load in general, we're also carving out time for ourselves.
Yeah.
And they speak in their podcast about what's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? Because when you go, no one's going to remember all the running around you did. They're going to remember your you-ness, your unique special gifts.
Yeah.
And are you carving out time to write if you are a writer? You know, are you carving out time to paint or to go for nature walks and take photos of trees? Like, are you carving out the time to fill your cup? Because that's what we're going to leave behind. And it's really important, and it's so hard when you're in the thick of it. You're just like, how would I ever have time to go for a walk, let alone paint, you know?
Or even just the basics of the language that you get to be home with the kids. Like, that's not a chore. That's not a thing that you have to do. Well, it is, but in terms of like having that be a priority in all of the things that you need to do to carve out that family time, to sit down and be with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Family time is so important. And then, I mean, for single parents, this is, I do apologize to any single parents who are listening to this. They're probably going, you have no idea how lucky you are. They have someone to do the soccer run.
I watched my mum do it from the time I was 6 and my sister was 2, you know. So, yeah. It's a lot for the single parents. So hats off to all of you. And, you know, I just think I was raised by a single mum as well, and I have a number of friends who are single mums, and from what I see, single mums really band together and form communities to help and support each other. But there isn't anyone to share that mental load with. There's no one to pick up the pieces. There's no one to do the school run if you're sick, you know. So, anyone that has any practical tips or advice for single mums or people in families, we would love to, you know, hear about your experiences, mental load, what that looks like. We'll pop a post up on Instagram for all the comments.
Yeah, we would love to hear everyone's, you know, I loved when I did the call out for, I wanted to hear about people's mental loads when I was writing Life After Birth. I just loved what people wrote. It was just so fascinating hearing people just write almost a stream of consciousness about this is everything that's in my head at any given point in time. So we'll put an Instagram post up and we would love to hear what your mental load looks like. Yeah. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can also write to us in the comments at the bottom. And, you know, if you don't want to share publicly, you're always welcome to send us a message on Instagram as well, just telling us what your mental load looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And things that you've done or things that you've implemented that have helped shift it and create awareness.
Yeah. And we'll do another podcast episode on the responses.
Yes, we will.
And we'll share them all so everyone can experience everyone else's.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, homb.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Homb Postpartum.